Thanks.
Great. Thanks, Kevin. So happy to be back with all of you again today, and especially happy to be back to introduce Dr. Jeff Kaplan. Those of you that attended our law conference in May had the opportunity to meet Jeff then. I had the wonderful opportunity to get to know Jeff prior to that. He did a presentation for us at the conference, and then he also was on our panel. So he and I had some great conversations, and we realized we have a lot of connections, which has been fun for us to explore that. Jeff has a great session prepared for all of you today. And during his talk, and that's really what it is, he does want to hear from all of you. So I do want to encourage all of you to put your thoughts in chat for him. And also throughout his discussion with you, he is going to ask some of you to raise your hand and be willing to verbally share your thoughts throughout the session. So when he does ask for you to raise your hand, if you're willing to talk with Jeff and really share your thoughts with everybody, please go ahead and just use the hand raising feature to raise your hand. You'll find that at the bottom of the screen. You'll see that you can raise your hand. Ben will then go through, well, after Jeff calls on somebody, Ben will have to grant you permission to come off mute. So if you've raised your hand and Jeff has picked on you, just look for that prompt on your screen, accept the ability to come off mute, and then you'll be able to have a conversation with Jeff. So really looking forward to today's session. With that, Jeff, I will turn it over to you.
Great, thank you very much. I want to share my screen here. I definitely appreciate everybody can see the PowerPoint. Great. Appreciate the introduction, Mag. It's always fun to reconnect with you. And I certainly appreciate the intro. So kind of the quick backstory is about 10 years ago, I started using sort of this phrase, leading with heart, as a tagline, right? So as an executive coach, I found like a lot of the work that I'm brought in to do is around interpersonal conflicts, right? So I remember one leader I worked with once, he said, I said, I'm gathering empathy might be something that we probably should put on the leadership development plan. He said, if you talk to my wife, she will tell you I have no empathy. I said, well, when we're done, your wife is going to thank me. And she did. And the bottom line is, it's not that he didn't have empathy, it's just that he basically didn't know how to show it. So that was a tagline. And then, we have this, thing sort of that we find out mostly around February, called COVID-19. And I've been sort of watching in the different organizations and leaders I'm working with, and asking a lot of questions about what's needed now. So in the extra time that I had, say around April, May, I sort of kind of went all in and created this website, leadingwithheart.com, but mostly based on a guess of sort of 5, we'll call it tenants, but certainly like characteristics of leaders that I believe, based on my limited experience, is sort of more needed now than ever. So as Mags mentioned, like my hope here is that we're going to have a discussion about this. I'd like us all to hear from each other and really hear from you about what you're seeing now that's working well in organizations where leaders are stepping up to kind of meet the current demands of the world today, but also where maybe it's lacking and where we need it more. So let me just jump in by starting off with a real situation. So there's a client that I recently started working with, and he's a leader of, we'll say, a particular division. And I was brought in because that division is, quote, a mess. One of the senior leaders said to me on my intro call, I'm ready to fire all 70 of them. So I'm supposed to come in and save the day, right? And I'm working directly with the leader, but I'm sort of doing some other work as well. So part of my work with the leader is doing 360 assessments, right? So interviewing people around him to find out kind of what they're seeing, what they're hearing, and what their experience is, right? So this next slide. So this was a direct quote. She actually wrote to me in an email as somebody that reports to him. There was an incident that she kind of gave me an explanation of that had happened the previous day. And And then here she's saying, literally, it was the worst day of my life, which was, I mean, this woman has been there for a couple of decades. She adds an enormous amount of value. He also felt it needed to send me an email about this incident that happened. And this is a quote from him. So here's my question. And for this, just if you could please put your responses in the chat box. Obviously, every response is an amazing response. There's no bad response, but what's wrong with this picture? I see there's Q&As too.
I would suggest everyone goes to chat. So the conversation for you, I would ask everyone to just want to put your thoughts in chat, and you've got some coming in for you now.
Yeah, so great. So lacking no responsibility, it's a good point. Lack of kindness and respect, good point. He's very dismissive, what she's experienced, exactly. 2 different pages, that's probably the best put in terms of what's happening, what's really happening here. Avoid someone at work, that's absolutely right. So here's the thing, right? So this guy is actually, you know, has a heart, right? So to this last comment about empathy, right? And he inherently has empathy. He's having a hard time showing it, right? And so he was brought in probably over his head to change the way that the structure of the system of that particular division and turn it around. So he's trying to do a lot quickly. He's really frustrated and he's really, really trying, right? And so, so it's easy to look at this in isolation, and needless to say, like, her comment wasn't the only comment. I'm just going to read this. Seems like he doesn't seem how to handle emotions. Employees don't feel heard, and that's absolutely right. So just think about your own worlds, right, in your own organizations, where people are trying to do the right thing and they're just sort of disconnecting. So he has been hugely gracious. I had a 3-way meeting actually this last week with him and this employee. I had another one with him and another employee. And the follow-up email from both of them was just really heartwarming, right? Like, they're both just trying to do the right thing. So you're going to see a lot of your comments in this next slide. So here's sort of the tenets of heart-based leaders as I see them. And again, when we open up the discussion, I really want to sort of hear kind of from you. So one is purposeful, right? So leaders who are strategic, who are mindful with their decisions, their words, their actions, right? So are they making decisions and are they acting according to sort of the mission of the organization in what's in the best interest of the organization, which I'll get to more in a bit? Do they have a sense of direction, right? So this guy has a clear direction, but he doesn't really have a good sense of like how to get there. Empathetic, right? So we saw that in the chat, right? So can you feel and appreciate the emotions of others around you, right? Are you so caught up in your sort of own head and your own what you feel like you need to do, and sort of you kind of not able to really connect with how other people feel? And then understanding, right? So not just understanding, like, for example, what your employees are going through, what other people are going through, but also understanding the business, right? Understanding the problems across the levels, right? And then humble, right? So are you thinking about, you know, I often joke with folks when they are in dialogue with someone and they're worried about what the other person is thinking of them in that moment, like how they're coming across or whatever. And I say, that's a very narcissistic way to think, right? You have a person right here, right, who's got their own experiences and their thoughts. Be with them, right? So are you humble and putting the needs of the organization, employees and others above your own? And then finally, are you engaged? right? Are you connecting on different levels? One of the feedbacks that I got with this leader is he lacked engagement, right? And so getting more engaged, particularly if you're trying to create a lot of quick change, is hugely important. So sort of the opposite of that other list, if you lack a purpose and you lose direction, if you lack empathy, you lose good people. If you lack understanding, you lose clarity. If you lack humility, you lose focus. If you lack engagement, you lose perspective. So how might that look actually in the organization? So in this next slide, I'm going to kind of show some different areas that I have seen where a lack of these different characteristics might play themselves out. And this is where I really want to start hearing from you. So when you have leaders who sort of lack these sense of purpose, empathy, understanding, humility, and engagement, you might get a lack of loyalty. People do the minimum. They resist change. You lack creativity or an innovative mindset, right? Because there's a lack of psychological safety, right? So in that realm, people exhibit CYA behavior, focused on always doing what's best for the organization. They're worried about themselves. There's a lot of increases in conflicts within and across areas. Poor decision quality, poor problem solving ability. People isolate. There's a reduction of collaboration and cooperation, and then often you see an increase in the number of HR complaints. So starting off, what I would love to see, if you could, is just in the chat box, just type in a number in which one of these that you've seen, and then you can also raise your hand if you're willing to share a little bit more about that. And in particularly, I'm thinking about the last 9-10 months or so, if you've seen these kinds of things. So looking at, so 3-6, I've got the Q&A up too, so one. All
right. So if everyone could please just put their comments in chat, that way everyone can see your response. And when you do put it in chat, please make sure to select all panelists and attendees. That way everyone that's in today's session will benefit from your response.
So far, it looks like, certainly one is seen most common from those that have answered. 6 is probably right behind, right? So lack of people doing the minimum, resisting change, which is very difficult. One of the things that's coming up for me too is like, just feel like people lack capacity, right? And so when you're trying to change, you need to have a capacity to change, right? And I think right now capacity is in short supply. You talk about sort of people isolating, right? It's almost kind of going to self-care mode. So lack of cooperation and communication. So thank you for that. That's hugely helpful. I want to, the next slide is some sort of specific questions, but before I go there, is anybody that is willing to and wants to kind of share live, we would unmute your audio so that you could share with others. If so, just raise your hand.
Yeah, so if you're willing to be verbal with us and share your thoughts around where you've seen this play out or provide more information around it, go ahead and raise your hand, and then Jeff will call on you and Ben can unmute you so that you can speak.
Oops, sorry. I see. So I don't get it. I don't see the in my. Oh, here we go. Got it.
So while they're thinking, Jeff, I'll just say one observation that I made in looking at everyone's responses. I didn't see that anyone selected number 2, which is interesting. And I wonder if that's because COVID required us all to, we had to be creative and innovative.
Yeah, that's a great point. I mean, on the positive side, one of the things that I heard more than once from leaders is that in sort of a morbid way, COVID did more to bring teams together than 3 years of team building exercises, right? Because now we have a common goal, right? And so we have no choice but to be creative and innovative, right? What I'm hearing too now is like sort of what's the fallout, right? So, in an odd way, what happens when you no longer have that common goal, right? And then all of a sudden there's once again sort of a fight for resources, not everyone sort of rowing in the same direction.
All right, so I don't see any hands raised, so it looks like everyone was just happy to put their numbers in chat for you and provide some feedback for you that way.
So here's, question, which of those you see in the upper right-hand corner, do you think would have the greatest positive impact on your company if you got more of it?
So you're asking Jeff if which of the 5 tenants there?
Which of the 5, right? So I'm curious. So what we heard is sort of 1, right, and then sort of followed by 6 were kind of the most lacking. Now I'm curious, are they the ones? So understanding and empathy, what would have the greatest impact, right? So for us, humility. So 2 for understanding, 2 for empathy, 2 for purpose. Another empathy, another purpose, empathy.
I think we're seeing a trend here.
Yeah, exactly. So here's where it's got to get real humble. It allowed us to come together with growth mindset and move forward, lifting us all. Thank you, Dan. Going on actually, Dan, like, so this next piece, I would really love to hear where you've seen people exhibit, like where you've seen people really step up, whole team together to honestly and thoughtfully share. Yeah, is that, Suzanne, is that you're talking about now, or you're talking about you're talking about right at the organization, right? Yeah. So anybody want to share specific examples of where you've seen this?
If you're willing to share, go ahead and raise your hand, and then we can allow you to come off mute.
Where courage shows up. It's usually, it's like okay, so Suzanne, let's start with you. Kevin, whoever, can you?
Ben will unmute Suzanne, yeah.
Ben, can you unmute Suzanne?
Suzanne, you should see a pop-up.
I am unmuted.
Hi. Thank you for being courageous and speaking up. Mike's yours, Suzanne.
I am Suzanne. So I'll share something that I think has made a good impact on our team. We haven't been able to see each other since March. We've been having, first we had weekly town halls, then bi-weekly, now monthly. But we always take the time to acknowledge that it's a stressful time and it's harder on some people than other people. And we always start with empathy. I mean, literally every meeting is an acknowledgement of that it's not the same old business as usual. And we don't bemoan it. We just embrace it and acknowledge it and call out that we're all here for each other, to support each other, to give each other a little extra flexibility, a little extra help. Look out for your coworker if they need some, extra time, or they need a little extra support. And we've been calling that out since COVID began. And it's had I think, a really good impact on the whole team. And we have actually seen people reflecting that behavior and doing that because we call it out at every meeting and every opportunity that we have.
That's awesome. Because one of the things I've noticed is we often get a lot of problem solvers in organizations, which is great, but their default is to notice what's going wrong, right? And too little do we get into the pattern of noticing what's going right and actually calling that out.
Mm-hmm.
Thanks, Suzanne. Deanne?
Good morning. It's actually Diane.
Oh, I'm sorry, Diane.
Not a problem.
Sorry, I clearly need glasses now. I've just been fighting it.
It's the spelling of my name. I get it all the time.
Okay.
We did have a problem employee that just constantly was bringing down the entire team. Unfortunately, it led to that termination. But being humble and appreciative of each other has allowed us to move into a growth mindset where we actually respect each other's strengths. And that allows us to lift each other up by learning from each other and creating an environment where we work together more collaboratively. We become a solid team. We're jumping in where there's a problem, but there's no negative with the problem. There's that positive feeling of we are a team. We have each other's back. We're there for each other. And we also have developed, we actually use thank you and I appreciate you. And those terms are coming into our conversations on a day-to-day basis, which has just strengthened that team and growth mindset.
It's great. Diane, when you think of, particularly I guess this last year, can you think of sort of either a moment or a decision or an action that was made that really sort of helped kind of sort of strengthen that or sort of fuel that approach?
It's hard for me to pick one because it's become a way of how we operate in business. So it's becoming our norm. So for example, we deal with companies that are having a negative impact with foreign trade. And with COVID, we have started to find that we're having issues because of the PPP loans. Instead of having a negative response to it, we immediately started being proactive with, this is going to change how we're working with our client firms. How can we be proactive and find solutions? And so the mindset has changed to not looking so much as the problem and being stuck, but looking to be proactive in problem solving.
That's great. Going back to the problem solving, it's like being solution focused, right? I always hear a lot where people sort of complain to others about the problem or the leader problem, as opposed to actually trying to generate solutions to solve it.
Right. That's exactly where we're going. It's more about finding the solutions and working together as a team than it is getting stuck in the muck of the problem. Yeah. It's like the way I describe it at work with we have an analogy of a coin has two sides. You can stay on the negative or you can stay on the positive. So anytime we start going on the negative side, we go up, time to flip our coin. And we start thinking about positive solutions.
That's great. One of the things I'm taking away too is just like the importance of language, right? Having a common language and a way of communicating, right? It also makes it easier to sort of, in a friendly way, call it out when someone is sort of kind of slipping back into sort of an old pattern that you're trying to get rid of.
Right, and that helps us when we talk to each other and use the term, I appreciate you, thank you for having my back, or thank you for thanking me. We have those in our conversations, which creates that foundation for us that there is an appreciation for each other and our team members, so that when something comes up and hits our place, we don't have that negative undertone.
Yeah, it's great. I mean, I imagine, right, like there's a meeting, right? And maybe like somebody just said to this person who maybe is upset about something that didn't go the way they expected. and they want to call this other person out. And that person had just said, thank you, and acknowledge them, right? The framing of the way that person is going to speak is going to be, positively impacted by that.
Absolutely. And we learned that the hard way with living through our former employee who just jumped all over us every chance, that once that person was removed from our workplace, there is that humble and empathetic understanding of each other that we've been beat up and we're not going to continue that.
Yeah, and I often feel like the organizations or even departments are tested with that one employee, right, who is creating disruption among the whole team. And if there's a lack of accountability or lack of action around that, it can really bring down a team, right? And sometimes like that is the right move. And then the message is also like everybody's important, and it's not this kind of behavior that chips away at psychological safety is not okay.
Absolutely.
Thanks. Mitzi, I know that you have your hand up. Can we, Ben, unmute Mitzi?
Hi, can you hear me?
Yep.
Okay, perfect. So when I'm looking at these, I think that I'm looking at the second statement where it says, where have you seen leaders leading with heart? I definitely
we can hold on 2 seconds, Mitzi. We can hear you, but you're a little broken up, I think, at least on my end.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, yep, let's try that.
Okay. So I'm looking at the second statement where it says, where have you seen leaders leading with heart? And I definitely give kudos to our HR director, because I feel like she really drives the empathy, leading with humility. But I guess one of my questions is, it really should start at the top with the owners. And so my question is, when you have someone, for example, in the role of the HR director that is really well versed in a lot of leading with heart, and that person has tried to communicate what is needed to the owner, but there is still either lack of self-awareness or lack of support, it just gets discouraging after a while. What feedback or what input might you have that we may be able to help our owner with this specifically? I know specifically that he is currently engaged in more executive coaching now. We've tried giving 360 feedback. I think all the feedback and all this should really help, but we're not seeing the change. We hear a lot more of, that wasn't my intent. And what we feel is that's your excuse every time, but you're still not listening. Do you have any suggestions or anything that we might be able to do to help our owner connect? Because we feel like if he's not leading by example, it doesn't matter what HR is trying to do in leading the culture, because it has to come straight from the top.
Yeah, Mitzi, thank you for bringing that up. It's great, and I'm sure a lot of people are like kind of nodding their heads right now, right? Because you see that a lot. I often see the leader who completely lacks these qualities, but knows it's probably a good thing for everybody else, right? And something that I have seen actually be effective, but this is where the executive coach that's working with the leader needs to do is, if you think about like what makes coaching and coaching around, say for example, this work is the motivation of the person being coached, right? And so first of all, can we clearly define the behaviors and then show the impact, right? So it's sort of like, when you say this, the perception is that when you say or do this, and the perception is this, and here in black and white on your 360 feedback is the impact. And by the way, here's the direct impact on the business. Here's the impact on the person, right? That's one piece. And by the way, when I talked about the leader who said his wife, the reason he even brought his wife into it. As I said, I literally said, what does your wife say, right? I bet because oftentimes, like, they might have families, right? And one of the things I say about leadership development, I said, look, this isn't just about making you more effective leader. It's also help you be a better person. And I guarantee you that that owner inside knows that there's a calling to be a better person. Like, I guarantee you that that leader has in their life, like, have himself, I think he said it was a he, felt hurt, right? And hurt others that actually mattered to that person. And that's just two examples of where you can link it to what's important and to them, and sort of reach that sort of calling to be a better version of themselves. And then the last thing I'll say though, and this is like, you can't have, without this, it falls apart, is tools. Like, you know, I see a lot of sort of like, you know, sort of Asperger's types and other sort of very left brain sort of scientist types that sort of miss that sort of relational thing. And when you give them very specific tools to help them be more, show more empathy, it's often that it's not they lack it per se, it's that they don't know how to show it, to show understanding, to model that. And then what happens is they start to experiment, and it has, you know, it feeds on itself, right? It becomes self-encouraging. Last thing I'll say, and then I'll turn it back over, is making sure that that leader is creating a feedback loop around them, you know, and being vulnerable and willing enough to say, by the way, you know, one of the things I'm working on is whatever, showing empathy or showing more understanding. And so I'm going to be trying different things. And so if something I do doesn't work for you, could you certainly offline let me know that? But also, if something does work, could you let me know that as well, right? So that I'm sort of reinforced, so that you create a culture instead of a gotcha culture, like here he goes again, you create a culture where the system is sort of supporting the behavior change. Is that, Missy, is that helpful at all? I mean, it's a fantastic question.
Yes, thank you so much. That definitely is very helpful. And I think a lot of what you shared, we are doing, but it's very discouraging. It's draining. Let's put it that way. It's very draining. And it's funny you mentioned the whole Asperger's and stuff, because we all the leaders have seen this, and we're like, we really feel strongly there's something else going on here that we're not aware of. And obviously, as teammates and employees, it's a place where it would take huge vulnerability for somebody like an owner to come forward and maybe share, something like that. I understand it's very confidential, but I think it would be helpful, because at this point I have a lot of team members and directors just pulling their hair out, like, what is wrong with me versus, there's something wrong here and it's not all about me. I think there's a lot of insecurity in our leaders, and people are demotivated. And we brought these up, we've given examples, we've done the 360 feedback. He hasn't provided any acknowledgments to, what is there. So, it's really frustrating, because I think we all have the right intent, but without the right support and leadership, and it's really difficult to put that in play. But
exactly, and I know there were a couple minutes left. I want to make a couple quick comments, right? And so one is I would highly encourage the coach to do something like a Hogan assessment, right? I mean, I can basically see his profile, just to help give him more, confidentially give him more feedback. And the other thing is, the good news is he doesn't have to even share the label to show vulnerability. I mean, he can say, look, in his feed forward. So if you look at Feed Forward by Marshall Goldsmith, like, by doing this sort of feedback loop piece, he can say, all he has to do is say, listen, I know that I can come across at times as insensitive, right? And the coach can give him a language for that. Like, I have a brain that just immediately goes into problem solving mode, or whatever this particular circumstance is, right? That sort of helps it not demystify, and say, so I can speak in ways that are intentionally hurtful. So first of all, please know it is so not my intent at all. So you know, but I need people to let me know in real time when that happens. And here's how you can do it. And my response is going to be thank you. And then of course, you know, the leader needs to be, you know, like driven like by the coach, like, you know, your response has to be thank you, right? And not like defensive and that kind of thing. So I get it. I think a lot of us have seen that issue, and the good news here is I've absolutely seen a lot of that turnaround. Tools, support, language, insight, right? And the coach who really understands working with that kind of behavior.
All right, with that, Jeff, I am going to have to bring your time to a close. So thankful that you were here with us. So thankful for the discussion, and those of you that were willing to come off mute and share, thank you very much for that. This has been awesome. I did want to let everybody know that we are going to send out a link to take in a quiz that Jeff has created. He is he's at that place of wanting to further the cause of Leading with Heart, and is looking to gather data. So that will be in the email that we send around later. If you take the quiz, he will share out the results with everybody that participates. So with that, Jeff, again, thank you so much for spending time with us again. And Amy, I'll turn it over to you.